Now, good day, good day, good day. Now, welcome back to Circle Theorem. If today is the first time you visit my channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, you put the notification bell on so that anytime I upload a video, you'll be the first person to get it. Now, let's move on. Now, we are still on the cast. We are going to apply cast to solve these particular questions. Yes. Now, that is the sign of the trigonometry ratios in the various quadrants. Now, let's look at how we can solve this particular question. Now, given that cos theta is equal to -3 out of 5 and theta lies in the second quadrant. Now, let's look at something. Don't forget that whenever the theta, the angle is in the second quadrant, this side is the second quadrant, and then the second quadrant, the angle lies between 90 and then 180 degrees. Now, don't forget that we talked about the fact that in the previous video, we talked about the fact that in the second quadrant, only the sign is positive. In the first quadrant, all the three ratios are all positive. In the fourth quadrant, only the cosine is positive. And then in the third quadrant, only tan is positive. So we have something called the cast. Don't forget when we are solving questions like this. Yes. Now I'm going to use this one to solve plenty questions. Follow me closely. Now, so since the angle is in the second quadrant, then it means that it's true. The cosine is supposed to be negative because in the second quadrant, only sign should be positive. So now let's move on. Now, how are you going to solve a question like this? Now, I have cosine of the angle theta equal to -3 divided by what? 5. Now, first, we need to know the component of this cosine. But what's the component of the cosine? The cosine is linked with the size of the rectangle triangle. That is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now, so it means that the numerator here is the adjacent, the denominator here is the hypotenuse. So you need to draw a rectangle triangle for it. Now, this is my rectangle triangle. This is my 90 degrees. Now, let's say the angle theta is this particular angle. Now, you know, if you check the previous video, we have solved a question like this, but just that all those questions were at an acute angle. All those questions were between 0 and 90 degrees. All those questions were in the first quadrant. So this particular question, we are moving out of the first quadrant, and it is in the second quadrant. We are going to solve more questions where the angle is not in the first quadrant. The angles are in the other quadrant apart from the first quadrant. The first quadrant becomes so simple and you don't need to think because in the first quadrant, only all the three ratios are all positive, so you don't think much. Yes. Now let's see. Now it means the adjacent is 3. Don't forget that the moment I talk about this one, it means this side is the hypotenuse, here is the opposite, this side becomes the adjacent, right? Okay. Now if you look at this particular question, the adjacent is 3, so the adjacent will be 3 here. The hypotenuse is 5. Now it means that I don't have I'm using m to represent the opposite. Now, why is that I didn't include the negative? I didn't include the negative because this one is the length of a rectangle triangle. And you don't have negative length for a triangle. Follow me closely. We don't have a negative length. Now, so you try to represent this one in a rectangle triangle form. Then you solve for the other side. You solve for the other side. Now, let's solve for the other side. Let's solve for the m. Don't forget that the hypotenuse square is equal to opposite square plus adjacent square. That is from Pythagoras theorem. Now, what's the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse is 5 squared. The opposite is m squared plus the adjacent is 3 squared. So we're going to have 25 is equal to m squared plus 3 squared is 9. So we have 25 minus 9 is equal to m squared. Now subtract, what are you going to get? You're going to get 16 is equal to m squared. Now, we can now get the value for m. What is m? M is the square root of 16. We have m is equal to 4. Now, I am using only positive because the length here is supposed to be positive, not negative. Now, we are supposed to find the remaining 5 trigonometry ratios. Now, where are the remaining 5 trigonometry ratios? Now, we have the cos here, left for the sine of the angle theta. Now, don't forget the sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, we need to solve for sine. We need to solve for the other 5. So, the first one is sine. The opposite is here, or the opposite here is 4 over the hypotenuse. Now, the hypotenuse is 5. Now, don't forget that since it is in the second quadrant, the sign is supposed to be positive. So this is the answer. Now, let's move on to the tan theta. Tan is adjacent, opposite over adjacent. Where is the opposite? The opposite is 4. The adjacent is 3. Now, in the second quadrant, the tan is negative. So I need to negate the answer. The tan is negative. I hope you are following clearly. Okay. Now, because of this, now we can now move on to the other 3. Sec theta. What is sec? Now, you know sec is 1 over cosine theta. Now, don't forget that the cosine is negative 3 out of 5. So, we have 1 divided by negative 3 out of 5. So, we are going to get what? Negative 5 out of 3. Now, let's solve for the next one, cosec. Cosec theta. Now, cosec theta is 1 over sine theta. Now, so we have 1 divided by sine theta. What is sine theta? Sine theta is 4 over 5, which will give us 5 divided by 4. The rest is calculation. Now, let's talk about cot theta. And don't forget, cot is the same as 1 divided by tan theta. So, 1 divided by, what is tan theta? Tan theta is negative 4 out of 5. So, we have negative 4 out of 5. Reciprocate this, we're going to get negative what? 5 over 4. Now, you see how simple it is. So, these are the remaining 5 trigonometry ratios. Yes. Now, let's take the next question. We're going to solve a lot of questions on this. Let's take the next question. Now, in the next question, I have no question you're supposed to solve. Now, in the next question, we have a point. Question 2. A point xy lies in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant. And tan theta, it is given as y over x, which is the same as root 3. Determine sin theta and cos theta. Now look at this simple question. Now this question, we are not supposed to find everything. We are supposed to find what? The sin theta and cos theta, where the tan theta is given as root 3. Now the point here is x and y. Yes, the point is x and y. It is given as theta. Now don't forget, this one is in the third quadrant. And in the third quadrant, only tan is positive. That is why the tan is positive root 3. Now, so let's draw the rectangle triangle. Now, so this is my tan. Now, don't let this one confuse you. Tan theta is root 3. Now, don't forget, tan is equals to what? Adjacent over opposite over adjacent. Now, what is the adjacent here? Now, root 3 means root 3 divided by 1. So, it means that since root 3 is the same as root 3 divided by 1, the opposite is 3. Root 3, the adjacent is 1. So, let me consider the angle theta here. we need to solve for the other side. Yes. Now the angle theta here, the opposite is root 3. The adjacent is 1. Now it means that I need to look for the hypotenuse. But don't forget that the hypotenuse squared is equal to the opposite squared plus adjacent squared. Don't forget Pythagoras theorem. So we have m squared is equal to, the square will cancel, the root, we're going to get 3 plus 1. So m squared is equal to 4. 4 to be m, you square root to both sides. Now square root of 4 is 2. Now so it means that the hypotenuse here is 2. Now since we have all the sides of the rectangle triangle, we can now find our sine theta. Sine theta. Now what is sine theta? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Now what's the opposite? The opposite is root 3. Hypotenuse. Now what's the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is 2. Now don't forget that this one is in the third quadrant. And then in the third quadrant, don't forget our cast. In the third quadrant, only tan is positive. So the sign is supposed to give us negative answer. So that is the answer. We are done. Now let's find the cos theta. Now cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Now what's the adjacent here? Adjacent is 1. The hypotenuse is 2. Now don't forget that in the third quadrant, the cosine is also negative. So I need to negate it. Now so this is as simple as that. This is as simple as that. Now let's move on to the next question. Now let's look at this particular question. Now given that, now this is our third question. Given that sine x is equal to 1 out of 2, we have to calculate cos x and tan x. Tan x. If 90 degrees is between x and then 180 degrees. Now we have to solve for tan x and then cos x. Now look at the x. The angle x is between 90 and 180. Now when we say x is between 90 and 180, what does it mean? Here is 0, here is 90, here is 180. Now so since x is between 90 and 180, it means it is in the second quadrant. Now at the second quadrant, don't forget that the second quadrant, only the sign is what? Positive. So the cosine will be negative, the tangent will also be negative. So what we have to do is that we need to indicate our rectangle triangle. Sine x is equal to 1 out of 2. Now don't forget sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So it means that when I draw a rectangle triangle, the opposite is 1 and the hypotenuse is 2. So let me consider this one as my rectangle triangle. The opposite, this one will be my angle x. The angle here is x. Now this angle is opposite to this side. The opposite is 1. The numerator is the opposite, it is 1. And then the denominator is the hypotenuse, which is 2. Now we need to solve for the adjacent. Don't forget that the hypotenuse squared is equals what? Opposite squared and then adjacent squared. So we're going to get 4 is equal to m squared plus 1. 4 minus 1 is equal to m squared. Now what are we going to get? M squared is equal to 3. So our m will give us root of 3. So this m will give us root 3. Now at this particular point, we can find our cos x. Now what is cos? Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then our adjacent here is root 3. Our hypotenuse is 2. Now don't forget that the cos is supposed to be negative because it is in the second quadrant between 90 and 180. Don't forget the second quadrant is the same as what? It's the same as obtuse angle. Yes. Now let's solve for tan. Tan x. Tan is opposite over adjacent. Now what's the opposite? The opposite here is 1. The adjacent is root 3. Now you know we can't leave our answer like that. We can just rationalize. Now root 3 times 1 would give us root 3. And then root 3 times 3 will give us 3. You see, we don't have to leave an answer like that. We need to at least rationalize. Now let's look at another question. Now we are building our understanding. It's very simple. Let's look at another question, more complicated one. Now let's look at this particular question. Given that, now question 4. Given that tan theta is equal to 3. Now where 180 degrees less than theta less than 270 degrees. Now we are to find sec theta minus cosec theta divided by cot theta. Now let's look at this question. Now you see the only difference between this one and the previous one is that this one, the angle is between 180 and 270. Now when the angle is between 180 and 270, now when the angle is between 180 and 270, it means the angle is in the third quadrant. And then in the third quadrant, only tan is positive. Yes. So we need to find the other trig ratios. And you know, before we can find the sec, we need to look for the cosine. Before we can find the cosec, we need to look for the sine. And before we can find the cot, we need to look for the tan, but the tan is given in the question. So what we have to do is that we need to indicate a rectangle triangle, find the cosec, the sec, and come and substitute into this expression. Then we simplify. That is all. It is so simple. Now let's see. Now so we have tan theta is equal to root 3. Now don't forget that root 3 the same as root 3 divided by 1. And then the tan is opposite over adjacent, meaning the opposite is root 3, the adjacent is 1. Now let me draw my rectangle triangle. Let me consider this angle to be theta. Then the opposite will be root 3. The adjacent will be 1. I don't know the hypotenuse. Now let's solve for the hypotenuse. So we have hypotenuse m squared is equal to opposite root 3 all squared plus the adjacent squared. So we have m squared is equal to what? The square will cancel the root, we'll get 3 plus 1. So m squared is equal to 4. M will give us root of 4, which is 2. Now our m here is 2. Now we need our sec and then cosec. But before then, unless you look for, if I want to find a sec, unless I look for cos theta. Now what is cos? Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 1. Hypotenuse is what? 2. Okay, let me write. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 1. Hypotenuse is 2. Now let's find sec. Don't forget that the sec is the same as 1 over cos. So 1 divided by 1 out of 2, we are going to get 2. I hope you are following. Now, let's find sine theta, because I need the cosec. Before I can find the cosec, I need the sine. Now, sine is opposite over. Now, look at something. Now, what is the sign for the cosine? Now, this one is in the third quadrant. So, in the third quadrant, the sign is supposed to be negative. And the cosine is supposed to be negative. The sine too is supposed to be negative. So, you're going to get negative here. You're going to get negative what? Negative 2. Don't forget. Now, the sine is opposite of our hypotenuse. And then, where is the opposite? The opposite is root 3 over hypotenuse. What is the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is 2. Now, don't forget that in the third quadrant, the sign is negative, so I need to negate it. Now, let's solve for the cosec, which is 1 over sine theta. Now, what is 1? So, we have 1 divided by sine theta. Sine theta is negative root 3 out of 2. So, you are going to get 2 divided by root 3 minus. And you know we can rationalize this one. So let me rationalize. So we have multiply here by root 3, multiply here by root 3. We are going to get 2 root 3 divided by 3. We are going to rationalize. Now the next thing is that, now let me clean this one. Let me clean here. Now the next thing is that we're going to take our expression. Our expression is sec theta minus cosec theta divided by cot theta. Now, what is sec theta? Sec theta is negative 2. So, I have negative 2 minus cosec theta. Now, cosec is 2 root 3 divided by 3. 2 root 3 divided by 3. Now, all divided by the cot theta. Now, what is cot theta? We haven't solved for cot theta. Now, let me solve for cot theta here. Cot theta is 1 over what? Tan theta. So we have 1 divided by, now tan theta is root 3. Tan theta was given in the question. So what will be cot theta? Cot theta will be what? 1 over root 3. I hope it's simple. It's simple like that. Now let me maintain it like that. Now divided by cot theta, which is 1 over root 3. Now at this point, this one is now simplification. So let me clean this one, then we try to simplify this one. Now, let me find the LCM of these two. Now, so we're going to have, it depends on how you want to solve. But let me find the LCM of this one. Now, we're going to have minus 2 root 3 divided by 3. Now, don't forget the whole of this one is also divided by what? 1 out of root 3. You understand? Now, the LCM will give us what? The LCM will give us 3. Now, so the 3 times minus will give us minus 6 minus 2 root 3 when you find the LCM. You understand? Now, let me change this one to multiplication. You're going to get what? Root 3 divided by 1. So, what you have to do is that we need to use this one to multiply this. Now, 1 times 3 is 3. Root 3 times minus 6 will give us minus 6 root 3. Now, don't forget that 2 root 3 times what? with 3 will give us minus 2 multiplying 3. So the whole thing will be minus 6 with 3. Now minus 2 times 3 will give us what? Minus 6, all divided by 3. Now don't forget that the 3 can go into 6 how many times? Now this one is the same as negative 6 with 3 divided by 3 minus 6 divided by 3. And then 3 can go into 6 2 times. So we have minus 2 with 3. And then 3 can go into 6 another 2 times. 2. So which means the whole answer, the answer to this one is the same as minus 2 minus 2 root 3. Now if you want to simplify it, you can factorize 2 out, negative 2 out. Then you're going to get what? 1 plus root 3. Yes, if you want to factorize, you can just go ahead to do it like this. You can just go ahead to do it like this. It's very simple. Now let me give you some 2 questions for you to try. I'm going to give you 2 questions for you to try. And send the answers to me in the comment section. Now question number 1. Question number 1. If tan A is equal to minus 8 over 15, when the angle is between, don't forget the angle is A. The angle A is between 90 and 180. It's between 90 and 180. Find sine square A minus cos A. So it means that we are supposed to find the sine A, we square it minus cos what? A. Now let's look at the second question. Now we have cos B equal to negative 1 out of 3. Find cot. You're going to find cot B and cosec. And cosec B. If B is obtuse angle, if B is obtuse, leave your answer in set form. Okay, so this one is so simple. We have these 2 questions. Make sure you send them to me in the comment section. Question 1, give me the answer directly. Question 2, give me the answer directly. Make sure you make notes for yourself. Yes, this one is just to build your understanding in mathematics. Yeah, this is Apostle 1 tutorial. Please share, comment, like, and then see you in the next video. Bye-bye.